Hello. I think I am live. Let me know if you guys can hear me okay. I think there should be a chat box. Let's see. Okay. Can you guys hear me? Sorry, I couldn't see the chat before, but now I see it. So I think we are good to go. Hello. Good, good. Okay. Thank you, Barbara. You can hear me, guys? Okay, awesome. Hi, Sylvia. Hello, hello. Thank you so much for joining me today. Okay, awesome, awesome. If you guys want to just, I know I'm a little bit early. It's like a little bit before 4. If you guys want to just tell me where you guys are tuning in from, I am tuning in from Southern California. Silvio is from Brazil. Let's see. Thank you guys for joining me today. We'll begin in just a couple of minutes so I can just have people join because it just turned 4 o'clock. If you guys are going to be following with me, feel free to have your packets ready so we can kind of do this together. We have people from Florida, from Texas, let's see, Minneapolis, Tennessee, Hawaii. Hi, Cheryl. Um, California, Jersey. So actually, I was born and raised in New York, but I moved out to California almost 10 years ago. So it's kind of crazy how I've been here for almost a decade. Just the other day, we were just talking about how crazy and fast time flew by, but we really miss, people and friends from the East Coast for sure. Hello, Rochelle. Hi, Tanya from Australia. Okay, so it is 4:01. Great. I am so excited to get started. So the last time I did a live on YouTube, it was 2023. So it's been about 2 years. But I'm excited to just kind of hop on live just to keep, just to have like a casual time for us to hang out and share about Spencerian script. So as you guys know, I may have seen in my social media as well as my emails, I just opened a registration for my Spencerian online course. And so my hope through the session is just to kind of share a brief introduction about the course, about the script, as well as you guys should have received the guide sheet packet, as well as the traceable basic strokes. So if you haven't, I did put a link under this live session window where you can input your email and it kind of like automates it so that you're sent an email with this downloadable PDF. And so give me a thumbs up if you have gotten that downloadable PDF. It should be about 25 pages with just kind of like guide sheets regarding the embedded ovals as well as the traceable basic strokes. So I'm going to kind of go through this together with you guys for the next hour. So if you have it with you, I would love for you guys to kind of follow along with me as I am kind of guiding you guys through this whole like session. Okay. Okay, great. So I'm gonna flip my camera and then I'm just gonna get started with what is Spencerian and how does it compare to copperplate script? I'm not sure, your experience with copperplate or Spencerian. If you guys can let me know in the chat box, what you're comfortable with, what your background is. Maybe you're a modern calligrapher, maybe you are an absolute beginner with zero experience in point-to-pen calligraphy, or maybe you took a copperplate course, but you don't know Spencerian yet, or maybe you know Spencerian, but you don't know copperplate. I love to just hear back from you guys about your background. So let me know and kind of share about that. And I'm going to flip my camera and show you guys a little bit about the difference between copperplate and Spencerian. Okay, so this is my book. Let's see if I'll do it like this. So kind of Okay, so I published this book in 2022. It's been about 3 years already. It's called Classic Calligraphy for Beginners, and inside of it, actually, was able to share two of my favorite pointed pen scripts, which is copperplate as well as Spencerian. So just to show you guys a little bit, this has a brief introduction as well to the two scripts that I love, as well as some flourishing and some kind of like faux calligraphy. But this is just kind of one of the sample pages in my book. So this is copperplate script. So let's take a look at this for a second here. And then if you flip to a different page, this would be an example of a Spencerian script, like this script right here. And for me, the big giveaway tip where you can discern between Spencerian and copperplate, because at first glance, it might look very similar because they're both written with the same tools. They're both written on a lettering slant. But I would say that the best way to kind of distinguish between the two scripts would be to look at the shade. If you look at the copperplate script here, you notice that for every single downstroke, there is a heavier weight to the stroke. So that's called a shade. And then all of these thin strokes here are called hairline strokes. And so with the copperplate script, with every downstroke, you have a very, you know, like rhythm, and also like adding the shade to the downstrokes. Whereas with the Spencerian script, it's a little bit more of a flowy and delicate script where the capital letters are shaded, but most of the lowercase letters are actually not shaded. You can add weight to it. It's optional for those of you who may like a more heavier script. But if you, for the classic Spencerian script style, it is more on the very like delicate style, which I love. And so actually, right before this live session, I was just kind of warming up my hand. And I wrote this name of one of my students that are currently registered to my Spencerian class. Maybe I should put it on behind a white piece of paper. I feel like it's very exposed right now. Oh, okay, that's better. Okay, so this is another example of how I personally love to mix up the two scripts. Because copperplate and Spencerian are similar, but like we said, like the downstrokes are shaded, and then the Spencerian stroke is very light script. Most of the lowercase letter does not contain a shade, and then aside from the uppercase letter, and then when you add flourishes. And so for me personally, I love incorporating both of these scripts. When I'm writing out names, I will usually do the first name in copperplate, and then I will do the last name in Spencerian. Let's see. I'm just kind of catching up on your messages here. Okay, great. So some of you guys have experience in copperplate. Some of you guys have experience in both. Perfect. Okay. So this is just kind of giving you an example of like how the reason why I love learning both of these scripts is because you can use them interchangeably, or you can mix it up together. And both of them are very classic scripts. So I really feel like they're elegant and they can be used for so many different occasions, like celebratory events, as well as correspondence letters. And then if you want to write cards to your friends. I use this very frequently in my work. And I picked up copperplate in 2014. And then a year later, I learned Spencerian. So it's been about 10 years doing both of these scripts. And so let's go into this guide sheet packet. So inside of your guide sheet packet, you should have received a bunch of different kinds of guide sheets. So we have guide sheets that have these embedded ovals as well as bigger ovals and different X heights. If you notice the bottom of these guide sheets, there are labels. And so you should see a section where it has the X height. So some of them are going to be ranging from 3 millimeter to 6 millimeter. And also the ratio is going to be 2 to 1 to 2. And then I kind of like labeled each of them. So 2 to 1 to 2 means that the ratio of your upper ascending section is going to be double the height of your X height. And then so it's 2 boxes high to 1 to 2. So your ascending space as well as your descending space is going to be double your X height space. And so in case you guys don't know what I'm talking about in terms of the lingo, let's go over really quickly the different, let me kind of straighten this up. Okay, what these different lines mean and why it's so important. Okay, so with Spencerian guide sheet, we're going to have to know all of these different lines. And so this is your X height, which is your baseline, which is your bottom of your letters. Then you have your waistline, or we call it the header. So the space between your baseline and your waistline is what we call the X height. And so when you notice some of your letters are going to take up the space in between just the X height, but then some of your letters are going to go above the waistline. And so that's where we enter into our ascending space. You have your first ascender line, which is the dotted line. You have your second ascender line, which is a solid. And then when you go below the baseline, you have your descending space. So everything below the baseline. So the first descender line as well as your second descender line. And so the reason why we like to have these guidelines and use it for our practice is because not all of our lowercase letters are going to fall just within the X height. So if I show you guys a brief example of the exemplar here, we have letters that take up just of our X height space, so A, C, right? And then we have letters like D that go up to only our first ascender line. And then we have these extended loop letters like B that where you're going to have to make these letters all the way up to the first ascender line here. And then when you move down your alphabet here, you have certain letters that are going to go from your ascending space all the way down to your descending space, or letters like G, where it goes only from your waistline to your second descender line. And so I like to label all of these lines because usually when I'm teaching or when I am practicing, I want to be able to identify where I'm going to start and stop each of the strokes. And so yeah, let me know if you guys have issues with the audio. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, so that's why it's really important for us to really understand these lines and know where to stop and where to begin each of the strokes. So we're actually going to, the last time I did the live session for Spencerian, I realized that, we kind of like worked through the guide sheet, but today I actually want you guys, if you guys are following along with me, you guys can take out your basic traceable strokes. So this is a sheet that you guys should also have received in the downloadable PDF. And I kind of want to go through each of these with you, okay? So there are 7 basic principal strokes for lowercase letters. If I were to, I'm sorry, 6 basic principal strokes. Okay, so here are the 6 basic principal strokes for the lowercase letters. We have your straight line. This is your right curve. This is your left curve. This is called your upper extended loop. And this is called your lower extended loop. And then this last one is called your semi-angular oval. And so these 6 basic principal strokes are going to be so important for us to master if we're going to execute all of the lowercase letters. And so I love like emphasizing the basic strokes for both copperplate and Spencerian because it's a very structured script. And so instead of, it's not just about your personal style, but there is a kind of like structure to how we actually, build up all of these basic strokes into our letter forms. And so not only do we have to master these basic strokes, but we really need to understand how to use the guide sheets. And so I'm going to kind of walk you guys through that. Okay, so let's start with this first one. So if you guys are following along with me, I want you guys to take out this straight line. It's the first basic principal stroke for the lowercase letters. And I'm just going to kind of go through it, and then I'm going to show you guys how you see them in letters, and hopefully it'll give you like a really good idea about, the script and how I like to teach it and how it's best to learn these traditional scripts. Okay, so in terms of tools, I'm using my oblique pen holder, and then I'm using a Nico G nib, okay, which is a great sturdy tip, as well as it's a pointed flexible nib. So you don't want to use a nib with like a broad edge tip. You want to use a nib that comes to a point so that when you add pressure to it, the tines are going to separate like this. Next, for my paper, I have these traceable sheets printed on the HP Premium 32. I think I linked it also under this window, but if not, I'll send a follow-up email with all the appropriate like links to help you guys get the right materials and supplies. Okay, in terms of the ink, here I have my kind of like my Dinky Dip inkwell. I love using the walnut drawing ink, which is what I use for when I'm practicing for a long time. I also like using Sumi ink, but when I'm usually writing for extended time, I like using the walnut because it's easier with the ink flow as well as easy to clean and to kind of like write longer. Because with the Sumi ink, I feel like if you're not careful and you kind of leave it out for a long time, it hardens up and it gets thicker, and it kind of prevents with the right ink flow. So it's a little bit more harder, I think, to use when you're writing for a long time compared to the walnut ink. Okay, so I have these in like these little plastic vials. And then I usually have like a dropper bottle of water nearby, just in case I need to dilute my water or clean out my nibs. And then I'm using my sorry, I'll zoom it out. I'm using my sock. This is my very old sock guard that I use to kind of like, I made a hole for the top as well as my thumb because I really want to keep the oils from my hands off the paper. And so I always write with some sort of a guard. So whether it be a playing card or an extra sheet of paper beneath my wrist, or just this kind of like old sock, that should be perfectly fine. And then I think that's it, right? Yeah, Nico G, walnut ink. I have this on HP Premium 32. Okay, so let's go right into the basic principal strokes. Great. Okay, so the first stroke is your straight line. You're just going to go straight down from your slant line, on the slant line from your waistline to your baseline. So we're just going to, let me see if I can. Okay. So just going from your waistline to your baseline with no pressure, you're just going to go straight down on your 52-degree slant line. So these are your slant lines that I've already put into the guide sheets. Each of this is a unit space wide as well as unit space tall. Some people call it the I space and U space. I space meaning from baseline to your waistline, U space meaning across from this slant line to this slant line. So they're all equal in width and height. And that's something to just remember with the guide sheets. Okay, so the first one is just going to be your straight line. It's very self-explanatory. Just go down very gently from your waistline to your baseline. And we're just going to build up our letters. Okay. So traceable strokes are going to be very helpful for you just to get the right shapes as you're building up your muscle memory. Just make sure not to have a death grip on your pen holder. You want to be gliding along the side of your hand as well as pivot your arm on your forearm muscle at the edge of your desk. Okay. And you always want to align your nib, the eye of your nib, which is like the little hole here, parallel to the slant line. So not like this, but you want to kind of make it parallel to the slant line so that when you add pressure, the tines are going to separate evenly. Okay, so this is pretty easy. So we're going to move on to the next one. Okay, so the next basic principle stroke is your right curve. So this is your right curve here. Okay, same thing, no pressure. And this time we're gonna go from our baseline and we're gonna go up to your waistline. So 1 unit space from your baseline to your waistline, going with a slight curve up. And I tell my students I like to picture a football shape within this stroke. Okay, and now we can start building just from the 2 basic strokes. Remember we did that straight line before, so this is a right curve. So if you can think about, we're gonna just now add the right curve with here's your right curve, straight line, and then another right curve. Okay, let's do that again. Sorry, I'm a little shaky. Okay, so right curve, straight line, and then a right curve. Okay, so there, and then when you do a little flick mark here at the first ascender line, there's your letter I. Okay, so even with that particular letter, you can make that letter just by the 2 basic principal strokes. Let's do that again. So right curve, straight line, and then a right curve. You can do a flick or you can just put a little dot. So that would be your letter I. One thing that is so important with Spencerian script is you really want to pay attention to the tightness of these curves down here. When you go from your straight line to your right curve, with copperplate, it was very rounded. It was more like an oval shape at the bottom. But with the Spencerian, you want to do it more of an angular check mark. You might have heard me say that many times before, but it's really the straight line connecting to a right curve. It's a very sharp turn, not like a rounded curve at the bottom. Okay, so some of my students who really trained in the copperplate, when they switch over to Spencerian, it can be tricky because they have to really remember mentally to make that curve really tight at the baseline. Okay, so let's try the letter I again. So here we have your right curve, straight line, and then a right curve, the flick mark. Okay, so now let's move on to the next one, which is your left curve. So here is our left curve, and I have all the instructions up here, as well as some of my notes here. And then I have these traceable sheets where I have 2 full lines of traceables, and then you guys can do alternating traceables to kind of like slowly remove those training wheels. And then in the bottom line here, I want you guys to try to do it on your own, okay? Let me see, I'm making sure I don't miss any of your questions. Okay. So let's do that up here. So if you're following along with me, you're going to go from your baseline to your waistline. And again, no pressure, just a slight curve, 1 unit space wide, going up, slight curve. Okay, but we don't want to do it too close to the top. Sometimes I see my students going really high up with a higher angle up, and then they're on the waistline too long. But we want to have, it's kind of like if you cut this in half, this box right here, if you look at this slanted square, and you kind of cut it in half. Okay, the area between the top part here and your bottom is similar. It's just that this line is slightly curved. So you do want to watch out that the spacing area from the top and then the bottom should not be so different. Okay, all right. So let's do that again. Okay, so we're gonna do, this is called our left curve because it's on the left side of your straight line. Left curve, left curve. Here's your left curve. Okay, so now I want to build up what can we do with the left curve. So I'm gonna do the letter N. Okay, so let's do it actually down here because I think I need more space. Okay, so once you go down here, this is our left curve. Here's our left curve. Here's another left curve. Straight line, left curve, straight line, and then a right curve. Okay, so there's your letter N. This one's a little bit pointed here, so let's do it again. I don't want it to look like really pointed like this, like straight down. That's also like not like a graceful turn. I want to have the turns to be very like elegant and graceful. So, okay, so let's do that again. So we have your left curve, straight line, left curve, straight line, and then a right curve. And all of those connection points are going to be 3 unit, like 1 unit like apart. So the letter N is going to be, the width of this whole letter is going to be 3 units wide, okay? So again, we did the left curve, straight line, left curve, straight line, and then a right curve. Okay, so that's combining 3 basic principal strokes. Okay, and again, we're going to make sure we're staying on your slant lines for all of your straight lines. We have your left curve that is slightly curved with similar area between the top and the bottom. And then we're connecting all 3 basic principal strokes to make this letter N. Yes. This video will be recorded and I'll send you guys kind of like a follow-up email after the session is over. Okay. Okay, so let's do that again. So let's do letter N. Okay, so left, so often, even when I'm practicing, I like to kind of say this out loud so I know how to make the letter. So if I go, I'll say it left curve, straight line, left curve, straight line, right curve. Okay, so there is your Spencerian letter N. Okay, now let's move on to the next principal stroke, which is your upper extended loops. Okay, so here are your upper extended loops. And this particular stroke is a little bit tricky because with copper plate, whenever we come down for the stem, we stayed on your slant line. But if you notice here, there is a slight deviation from the slant. So here is our slant line, the 52-degree slant. But notice like this part right here. The top of that loop actually has to go a little bit to the left of your slant line. And then it kind of transitions right at your waistline here. Okay, so if I were to break apart this particular stroke, let me try to do it with like all the different colors. So with the upper extended loop here, we're going to make it by combining, this is called our extended right curve, right? Because it's on the right side. So here's our right curve. And then we're going to make our left curve down. So to the waistline, left curve down to the waistline. And then we're going to add in our straight line from your waistline to your baseline. So this is all straight here, okay? So it's actually, this particular stroke is going to be 3 different strokes combined together. So let's see. Okay, so let's try it together with our nib and our ink. Okay, can you guys see this okay? Okay, so we're gonna do our extended right curve. Okay, so from your baseline, extended right curve. As you go around the curve, you're going to make a slight left curve and then transition to your straight line. So you guys can use these traceables to really practice that. It's going to feel uncomfortable at first, but the reason why we do this is because if we were to go all the way straight down, like right here, do it down here. Okay. The reason being is because unlike copper plate, because this doesn't have a shade, if we just go up to the center space and then come down on your slant line all the way straight down like copper plate, the loop here is going to become very small and tight. And so the reason why we do have to keep in mind this slight curvature here is because we really want to open up that loop on the top. So sometimes I do think about this top shape here as kind of like a teardrop shape, like that. Okay, so it helps to kind of envision the top part of the upper extended loop as a teardrop before you transition into that straight line. Okay, so let's do that again. Okay, so again, this upper extended loop is going to go from your baseline extended right curve, slight left curve, and then straighten up to the baseline. Okay, now I'm going to add in a left curve. Okay, left curve, straight line, add a shade, and then transition to another right curve. Okay, so now there's your letter H. Okay, so we have, that's how you, create this letter. And I'm just going to show you guys how you can incorporate this basic principle strokes as well as all the other basic principle strokes together to form a different letter. Okay, so, but this time with the straight line for letter H, I'm adding a slight shade. Okay, so let's do that again. So we have your extended right curve, come around with a slight left curve, straighten up at the bottom between your X height. And then we're going to do another left curve, straight line with a slight pressure, and a right curve. Okay, to exit. And from here, you can even add in another eye. So this is how you connect to the eye. So straight line down with another right curve. And then add a little flick. And there's your word high. Okay, so if you're able to see the letters broken down into the basic principle strokes, it really helps us to know how to practice the letters as well as know how to utilize these guide sheets. Okay, so Daffin's asking, can you show which part of your hand is actually fixed to the table and which part moves? Let's see. If I were to zoom out here like this. Okay, I'm going to take off my sock so you guys can see. Well, I'm left-handed, so it might be a little different when you see it on the screen here. I'm angling my paper 90 degrees to the right, and I'm writing towards my body. So my body's right here, and I'm writing kind of towards my body, but I'm always keeping it within my sweet spot. My hand, when I'm writing, my hand, I am, it's called a combined movement where I'm gliding along the side of my hand. So this part of my hand is going to give me the support that I need to stabilize my hand because I don't want to lift my hand off the desk or else like it's not going to give me enough support as I'm writing with this nib. And so I'm resting my hand along the side of my hand on the table here on the desk. And I'm using my fingers here to make these strokes, but I'm not planting my wrist to the desk. So I kind of briefly talked about it before, but if I show the edge of my desk here, you want to pivot your arm to I'm sorry, I'll make it brighter. Okay, you want to pivot your forearm muscle, which is the muscle right below your elbow here. You want to kind of anchor that at the edge of your desk. And then as you hold your pen here, so I'm gonna show you. So this is where my arm is. My arm is always kind of positioned right here, anchored at my forearm muscle. And then my pen is, and then my hand is gliding along the side of my hand. Let's see. so that when you are adding a little bit of pressure with your finger for the shades, but you are also not planting your wrist along your on your desk because that's really going to prevent your range of motion. So I always like encourage my students to make sure that you're pivoting at their forearm muscle, and then you want to kind of practice. And we do a lot of warm-ups in the class. We do oval drills, we do like figure eights, we do nib exercises. Before we even go into these basic strokes, we make sure that we are really like warming up our hands and arms properly so that we're not feeling very tense. Hopefully that answered your question. So you are having support from the side of your hand on your desk, and then you're pivoting your forearm muscle at the edge of your desk, and you're using both a combination of your muscles from your finger as well as the larger muscle from your arm to make the longer strokes. Okay, Vanessa, the guide sheets with these particular strokes should be in your PDF. So if you check your email, it's at the latter part of your PDF. It's 25 pages, so this should be towards the back of your PDF, and then the front of your PDF should be just the empty guide sheets. But we're just going to be working through these traceable guide sheets for the session. Okay. So that's how that's how you're going to be making the letter H. And then we also talked about the letter I. Okay, so let's move on to our lower extended loop. Okay, so that's this sheet right here. Okay. I have all my notes here that you can read later. And then these are your samples. And then this is your traceables. Okay. So let me zoom in a little bit more here. Okay, I'm going to start from here. So with this particular stroke, you're going to go straight down from your waistline to your baseline. And then you're going to transition to a slight curve here on the right side of the slant. And then do an extended left curve. So it's pretty much the same thing when you flip it. Do you remember how we talked about how we did the extended right curve, a left curve, and then a straight line for the upper extended loop? It's the same thing except it's flipped. Okay, so that's also helpful to kind of remember. Let's do a couple of those. So we'll do our straight line. Here's our straight line, transition to a slight curve, and then do an extended left curve. Straight line, curve out a bit, and then do an extended left curve. Okay, now we're going to combine, let's combine our right curve for our entrance stroke. Okay, so from here, from the baseline, remember the right curve is just your slight curve from your baseline to your waistline. I want you guys to combine it. So go right curve and then go down, straight line, right curve, and then extended left curve, and then do a little flick mark at the first ascender line. There is your letter J. So it's really cool to see all of these letters come together using these basic principal strokes. Okay, so we'll do our right curve, straight lines, slight curving out, extended left curve, and then a flick mark. Okay. So let me try to just reiterate here. So here's our straight line, okay? And then we're gonna transition to our slight right curve, okay? And then we will transition to our extended left curve. So this is an extended left curve all the way from our second decenter space all the way up to our waistline, okay? So this is an easy way for you guys to combine your right curve with the lower extended loop to make the letter J. Okay, so let's move on to is this the last one now? Yes. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our semi-angular oval. Okay, so semi-angular ovals are also a little bit tricky because there is like multiple strokes involved with this one one stroke. So here, I'll do it right here. Okay, so you're gonna begin at this corner right here, and we're gonna do a straight line. So I'm gonna do a straight line like this with that color. And then we're going to do our left curve going down to the baseline. So this is our left curve, okay? And then we're going to transition back up to the waistline. So going from your baseline up to your waistline. So it's not some people mistake this particular stroke as just doing a stroke like this, like a teardrop, right? Where you're coming to a point here. But what you have to remember is this part right here is flat. And that's kind of like a signature oval shape in Spencerian. So that's very important to remember is that you're going to begin with a flattened top, curve it down, and then finish it off with your right curve. Mariella said a question about inks. I think it also depends on the nib because I know with the Nico G's, I never have an issue with the Nico G's, corroding or rusting. I do believe it depends on the material that the nibs are made. Like I believe this is made of chrome. The Nico G's here. But then if you use other nibs that are more, I don't know if it's copper. Let me see if I can find one here. I know definitely like the Hunt 22, like this one, is made of like a kind of like a different material. So I find that with the Hunt 22, it might rust a little faster. Or even the Jalot 404 as well, and the Leonard principle. So I think aside from these G nibs, the other nibs, like you're mentioning, the Jalot 404 or the Leonard principle can kind of rust over time depending on the inks that you use. The Moon Palace can do that with these nibs, but I've never had an issue with the G nibs. So I really like actually using the G nibs for Spencerian because it has such a sturdy tip and it's easier for me to control because most of the script on the letter forms in Spencerian are hairline strokes. But if I'm not careful, if I use too flexible nib for Spencerian, then I feel like my hairline strokes are a little bit thicker. Um, I've never used Best Bottle, so I'm not really sure about that one. And I have not used the Kuretake Sumi ink. I have the Kuretake Vermilion, and I haven't really seen too much issue with that. But even if it like takes off the coating, I think that's fine. As long as you're able to still write and see the hairline and shade, I wouldn't worry so much about like taking the coating off. You do want to remove the coating so that the ink will adhere well to your nib. So I wouldn't worry so much about that. I have the thing that I look for in terms of replacing my nib is I usually make sure that my hairlines are pretty thin. And then when you're writing for a long time, sometimes my tines can separate and then my ink is gonna just flow out, and create like thicker strokes. And so that's when I usually like switch out my nib. But if your nib is still working well, I wouldn't worry so much about affecting it with the ink. Okay, so let's go back here to the stroke. We're gonna do it with our walnut ink here. So remember, we're gonna do a flattened top from here, go down, left, left curve, and then a right curve. So flatten, left curve, and then a right curve. Okay, I'm gonna show you guys which letters contain this particular oval. Semi-angular oval. Okay, so flat top, left curve, and then a right curve. Okay, now I want you guys to do an extended left curve. So we're just gonna add the extended left curve that is 1 unit and 3/4 wide. So right here. So from here all the way to here, we're gonna do extended left curve. Here is our extended left curve. We're gonna retrace, okay, along the top because we still have to do a flattened top. We're gonna add a pressure here, come up. Oops, I did it too fast. Come up back to the waistline, go straight down on your slant line, and then exit with your right curve. Okay, so there's your letter A. Let's do that again. So your entrance stroke is going to be 1 3/4 wide. So you're going to start from here. You go extended left curve, flatten top, add a pressure to the baseline, go up, then straight line down, and then exit stroke. So there is your Spencerian letter A. So how we turn this into a letter D is we're going to go from your first ascender line. So after we do this curve, after you do semi-angular oval here, instead of going straight down from your waistline to baseline here, we're going to start from up here, shade release. And basically, this is like a tick mark, right? You go from thick to thin, and we're going to go all the way down and then do the same exit stroke. So letter A and letter D look very similar. It's just that the letter D has a longer stem here that goes from a square top from your first ascender line down to your baseline, and then you're going to exit off the same way you do with the letter A. Now let's try to add on the, let's say, like a lower extended loop. I'm just kind of showing you guys here how you were adding on these basic principle strokes to make these letter forms. Okay, so now we're going to do the same extended entrance left curve. Flatten top, add a pressure here, go curve it back up. This time we're going to go down towards the descending space. We're going to go straight down, add a slight curve, and then extended left curve up to your waistline. And there is your letter G. Hope you guys find this to be fun. Because for me, I love kind of showing this like different letters kind of coming together with combining the basic principal strokes. Okay, so the main thing here that you do want to watch out for is where you begin. So this is like 1 3/4 width apart from your beginning to where you, for the beginning of your semi-angular oval. And then when you're crossing here, right here for your extended left curve, for your finish, you do want to make sure that you're crossing it at the baseline. So that is also something to watch out for, because sometimes people, if you're not watching carefully of where you're crossing your strokes, you might be doing something like this, where you come here, go down, let's say you come up here, and then you go here, and then you go something like that. I've seen students do that where they're not intersecting the point here for the extended left curve at the baseline, but they're doing it lower. And so you really want to watch out for that, because that is going to really affect the ratio of your letter form. So we talk about this too. We talk about where the intersection points are, where you begin, where you end. This oval shape is 1 unit space wide. This shape of this oval here, the width of this is half of your unit space wide. And then this whole stroke here is 3 unit space tall. So a lot of the Spencerian, for me, it really helps me to think about it in terms of unit space. Like, how wide is it? How tall is it? Where do I begin? Where do I end? And that kind of helps me to know how to practice. What angle are these 3 curves at? Let's see. Which 3 curves? This particular, I haven't really measured the extended curves, but it helps when you just kind of focus on like the curve that we did before. When you're practicing this curve, this left curve here, when you keep practicing these left curves, the extended left curve is just going the same direction. There's no set angle that I'm measuring for these strokes. The only angle that you really want to pay attention to is your 52-degree slant here. And then just in terms of your width of your angular ovals, and remember we talked about how you want to keep this part flat and then getting the shapes right. And so I don't really measure the angles of these extended curves because they can be different, a little bit different. And it kind of confuses me particularly to kind of try to memorize every single angle. The angle that we really want to focus on is just this 52-degree, and also we talk about in the course the connecting stroke from, let's say, the D here to your next letter. Let's say this next letter is an I. This angle right here is 30-degree angle. So that's something that we talk about, but we don't measure like the extended ones or the extended angle of this stroke right here. The important things to remember here is this 52 right here, 52-degree. And then when you're connecting it between one letter to another, this particular angle is 30. So 30-degree connecting stroke as well as a 52-degree slant on your downstrokes. So how do you know when to add a shade? That's something that I will be teaching you guys. So going back to the exemplar here, this is the exemplar that I include in my course. Let me take it out of this sheet here so it's not glaring at you guys. Okay, so just kind of like an overview. So the Spencerian strokes, so this is a classic traditional Spencerian lowercase letters. So we only add shade for like places here like A, like this bottom part for the B, top part for the D. It's very specific where you add the shade. So the classic Spencerian script, we kind of go over all of these letters and I show you guys where to add the shade, where you can add an optional shade also. Because sometimes for the letters like M and N, traditionally it doesn't have a shade because they're all monoline script, but optional would be to add a shade because maybe you want your Spencerian to have a little bit of weight to it. So that's something we cover fully, like more in detail in the course. Um, oh, thanks for joining, Laura. Okay, yeah, no worries. You guys can go if you guys need to sleep. It's getting late where you are. I will send out a follow-up email to everything after the session ends. Okay, so the next couple of, we're going to wrap up with the uppercase letters, some demo for the uppercase. So two more traceables that I included in the PDF is connecting from your straight line to your right curve. So we did this before with the letter I, and then this one we did for our letter N. And so I just created two more traceables here so you can practice these connection points, really making sure that you're connecting here on top and bottom really tightly. So I hope you guys find these traceables useful. Let's move on to the three. So the lowercase letters have 6 basic principal strokes, and then the uppercase letters have only 3. These are the 3 basic principal strokes for uppercase letters. We have your direct ovals, you have your reverse ovals or indirect ovals, and then you have your capital stem. So if you guys want to follow along with me, I'm going to show you guys how to use this and also demo some uppercase letters. So let's start with our direct ovals. And I am also going to take out, let's see, I'm going to take out the embedded ovals because this is where you're going to find it to be super helpful with your uppercase letters. And let me give me a moment to take that out here. Let's see. So for me, for the course, we like to practice on the 6 mm height, but it's really big. Naturally, I think with Spencerian, it's more comfortable at maybe 4 to 5 mm in X height. But because when we do the course, I really want the students to focus on the details. I like to enlarge the letters so that they can really zoom in on how they should be executing the letter forms. And then as we progress through the course, I'll tell them to kind of like try the smaller X height, and then you should feel a difference because you're not straining or stretching your to your muscles to reach those longer letters, especially for the uppercase letters. So just to show you guys a sample, let me see if I can pull up. Okay. Yeah, so this is kind of a sample of like what we cover in the course. It's kind of like glaring here. Yeah, so we kind of break down each of the letters in terms of what our width is for each of the shapes, how high, how wide, and then also we do sample kind of like names and we write kind of connecting it to our lowercase letters. But this is just a sample of like what we cover in terms of how we dissect each of these uppercase letters. Okay, but the main thing here is that I do want students to practice using these oval embedded guide sheets. So you should have this also in your packet. This is a 6 mm, but also I like using the 5 mm for the uppercase letters. You have ovals here that take up the 2 unit space wide, but I also included letters, guide sheets where it's only the width of these ovals are slightly smaller than 2 unit space wide. The reason being is because when you look at the uppercase letters, and let me pull out my exemplar for each of you guys here. Because if you look at your uppercase letter kind of like at a glance, when you do the reverse ovals, like letters like P, these are 2 unit space apart. So going from your capital stem here to the next stroke is 2 unit space. And this is where you see that oval, the embedded oval. But then some of your letters are going to be slightly smaller, like U, V, and Y. They're good. If you look at the space here between your downstroke here and then your reverse oval shape here, it's actually going to be a little bit smaller than your 2 unit space wide. Okay, so that's why I included both because I feel like I really want to give like all the guide sheets that you will need for the letter form. So let's start with our direct ovals. Daphne's asking, among copperplate, Spencerian, and cursive, I don't offer a course for cursive because my Spencerian course and cursive workbooks my cursive is like a simplified form of Spencerian. So if you learn Spencerian, it's really easy to kind of move on to the cursive workbooks and do a self-study. But Copperplate and Spencerian, the courses that I offer are very extensive and they're very comprehensive because there's a lot that we cover for each of the letter forms, the connections, the numbers, the words, the phrases. There's just too much to cover that I feel like you can miss when you're trying to learn it on your own. So I've had students who try to learn from books or just learn it through YouTube videos, and then they take the course because they need more of a guidance from the ground up. And that's kind of like where my course is it's a 9-week course. So I'm asking students to set aside time for 9 weeks so that we can kind of walk through this together. You can learn it on your own. I've had students also just kind of work through the workbooks because even with my practice pads for my Spencerian and my copperplate, I do offer with the copperplate practice pads, you can work your way up from the basic traceables, do the letter forms, and then there are some connections. I don't have the connections for the Spencerian yet. I only have it for the copperplate. So that's just something to keep in mind. Hopefully I can work on that to offer it to you guys in the future. But for now, I only have the words and connections available for a self-study workbook for my copperplate. Okay, so let's move on to this. I'm sorry, I might go like 10 minutes over our one hour slot. But there's only 3 basic principal strokes for uppercase letters. So the first one is your direct oval. This one is gonna go in you're gonna begin at your second ascender line, and we're gonna go counterclockwise from your second ascender line to your baseline, adding a shade here to the middle of your stroke. Okay, so let's do that together. So we're going to go from second ascender line, come around, add a shade, release pressure, and then come back around to your top. And if you go a little bit away from the oval, don't worry about it. I don't want you guys to try to just trace over these. These are here as your guide. But if you are not exactly following the traceables, that's okay too. Okay, so here is your Second is underline, add a shade, release pressure, and then come back around. And this is in a counterclockwise motion. Okay, so I'm going to go down here. So where we see this particular shape in our Spencerian letters, I'm actually going to do it with a pencil first. I can kind of draw it out for you guys, and then you can follow along with me with a nib and an ink. So oftentimes, like I was going to say, I had a student who went through the entire course with just a pencil, because even with a pencil, you can add shade and then like lighten up for the hairline. So if you don't feel comfortable or confident using a pointed pen, and there's just a lot of factors involved with like setting up, and you feel frustrated, you can just learn the course and take the course or learn the script using just a mechanical pencil. So we can so we'll do that. So hairline, add a pressure, release pressure, come back around. And I'm going to show you guys how to do your letter C. So the letter C has this particular shape. Oh, thank you, Judy. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm just grabbing something here. Okay, so the letter C here is going to be the same width apart, but let's say, we're going to start from here, okay? And we're going to make a loop here, come around, add a pressure, same way. And then instead of coming back up, we're going to just exit out this way. So that's actually your letter C for Spencerian. Okay, so let's do it here so you can see it better. So we're going to start kind of at the half mark, so 1 unit space and a half, and we're going to make a loop like this. We're going to come around, so like that counterclockwise oval, add a shade, okay, come up, and then exit off to the side. Okay, so that is your Spencerian letter C. And the shade is going to be somewhere here, okay, going from your thin to your thick. Okay, so let's do that with our nib. Okay. So this is kind of your embedded oval here for the letter C. And then we're going to go from 1.5 space from your waistline. We're going to make a loop. Come around, touch the top, add a pressure, release, and then exit off. So the exit for the C is going to be like between these two slant lines. So it's maybe about 2 3/4 width apart. But it really helps to kind of envision these basic strokes, because then when I'm working on my letter forms here, it's really easy for me to, once I work through my muscle memory to make this oval shape, then when I'm doing these letter forms, it comes like a lot easier than me trying to make this letter form just with no guides. So definitely practice this letter. You can practice it with a pencil first. So from here, you can do just like we did before. You can just with the pencil, add a loop, come around, add a pressure, release, and exit. Okay, so there's your C. And then we can add in, let's say, you guys can call out like a name. Do you guys have a name that you want me to write with the letter C? I can write it down here. I'll give you guys a moment to chime in if you guys want me to write a name that starts with the letter C. If you're having trouble with like ink flow, I also like to kind of make a little scribble here on top. Okay. Cameron, that's the first one I saw. So let me do that one. Okay. So I'm going to start from here. So now I don't have the embedded ovals, but it's okay. I'm just going to go from here, 1.5 spaces from your waistline. Okay. Cameron. Okay. I'm going to make a loop. Come around, add a shade. Go right into my A. A straight line down. Here's my O and my N. So notice that I'm writing in a 6 millimeter X height, so it's really big. So that's why, depending on your flow of writing, you can lift your pen. There's no set rule like copperplate, like you have to lift up your pen at every stroke. With Spencerian, it's a little bit more like depending on your flow of writing. So I don't know if you guys noticed it, but okay, so this is what I mean by when I said traditionally the M and the N are hairline strokes. But sometimes, let's say I want to make my letters a little bit more shaded, then I just add a shade to the last stroke of the straight line. So right here for the M and right here for the N. So there is the name Cameron. Okay, let's go to the next one, which is your reverse oval, because I do want to show you guys other examples of how to use this. Okay. So here is your reverse oval, and there are a lot of letters that have this particular shape. Just to kind of briefly go through them. Here is your letter H is a reverse oval, K is your MN, you have your Qs. A lot of this shape here it was really difficult for me to execute when I first started at Spencerian because going from upward down, like this kind of like clockwise oval starting from the baseline was very hard. And that's why I developed the guide sheet with the embedded ovals because for me, I couldn't really see it on the paper, but having the embedded ovals really helped me to execute them consistently. So let's do this together. Okay, Judy, could you go to I don't recommend with the capital letters going back and adding shade. It's very difficult actually to go back and add the shade. I'm just demoing it to you guys here, how I did it with the letter M and N. But if you're not careful, the transition for where you add the shade, it could look not natural. And I actually think adding the shade while you're writing is the best way to add the shade. I wouldn't recommend writing it out all in hairline and then going back and add the shade because it really breaks up your flow. So even with the capital letters, you do want to make sure you know where to add the shade and where to release the shade. Um, and I just added it right now just to show you guys for the M and N. But if I were to write the name, I would actually add the pressure while I'm writing the M. I wouldn't go back and add the shade. Okay, so let's do this one. So for the reverse oval, most of the shading for here actually falls like kind of like transition point right here. The shading for the reverse oval, this is all hairline stroke. And then as you come around here, you're going to kind of add a shade towards the bottom. It's going to be a little bit more bottom, but some of the letters, you're going to add it in the middle. And I'll show you guys a little bit difference between the two. So I'll demo the letters N and W. But for now, let's practice a little bit for the basic principle strokes. So this is your reverse oval. You're going to start at your baseline, come up, hairline stroke, come around, gradually add pressure here, and then release. Okay, let's do it again. So hairline stroke, come around, gradually add pressure, and then slightly taper off at the end. So where you see this particular stroke would be in your letter N, capital letter N. Then from here, you're going to do a left curve up. See, my ink is already kind of drying up because I've been like writing for a long time. So whenever that happens, I just add a little bit of water onto the Viva paper towel, which is the paper towel I use to wipe all my nibs. And then I wipe off the ink from my nib just to kind of reset. And that really helps me with the ink flow again. Okay, and then you can do like a scribble test to make sure the ink is flowing. Okay, so you have your left curve up to your first ascender line here, and then go down, straight line down, and then a right curve up. Okay, so there is your letter N. Let's do it down here because of the okay, so we're gonna do it again. So here is your reverse oval. Come around, add a shade, release, left curve up, down, and then exit out to with your right curve. Okay, so this one, notice that I purposely didn't do a full 1 unit space wide. I only did it from this side to like right before your next scent line, and that's purposeful. It's because we don't want that letter to take up a full unit space wide. Okay, let's do that again. So this time I'm gonna write the letter. Oh, you guys can give me a name for the letter N. For those of you who are here tuning in live, you guys can kind of participate with the names that you want to be written. Sorry, my hand's so shaky right now. Okay, so left curve up, down, and then from here, we're gonna connect it, let's say, nice. Click mark. You can even do a slight line right here too. Okay, let's do Miguel. Oh, hi, Melanie. I love like recognizing names. Okay, so let's do Miguel. Okay, so we're gonna do 2 units spaced apart here. Okay, and we're gonna go up. Actually, that was a little high. This is a good example of it being, oh, let's do it like that so you guys can see better. Okay, this is from here to here. I meant to do it lower and I was thinking W for some reason, which is why I did it like that. Because the W, we want the shape to be lifted, but with the N, it's lower. Okay, like that. And then, is it Nigel or Nigel? Sorry. Nigel. And whoops, that was slightly off slant. I, G, E, L. Here's Nigel. Okay. So this form right here, where the shade is kind of lifted towards like the middle of the right slant here. Let me show you guys where that comes up. So actually that is the letter W. Maybe I should wrap it up. It's like 5:11. I do have one more basic principle stroke I wanted to go over. Okay, so here's your reverse oval. If you add a shade towards the middle, but let me show you the W. The W is a little bit tricky, but I'm gonna make some dot marks here, and dot here. Okay, so what you want to do with this letter is after you make this reverse oval, you're going to make a right curve from here to this point right here. So this point is in between these 2 strokes. So you're going to make a right curve, go up, right curve. Then you're going to do a left curve down. So from this point to this point now, we're going to do a slight slight left curve down. Okay. And then we're going to do a straight line here, straight up along the slant. And then we're going to do another right curve. No, I'm sorry, left curve, getting confused. Left curve up to this point. Okay, so from here you get transition going like this. Okay, so there is your W. So it's actually, so you have your reverse oval, you have your right curve, left curve, straight line, and then another left curve. So how you use this for your embedded oval. So if I were to take out my embedded ovals now, this one, here is my, I want to show you guys this. Okay, so this is my embedded oval, 6 millimeters is pretty big. And this is the one where the oval is 2 unit space wide. So we talked about doing, let me just kind of redraw this W again. So going from the baseline, reverse oval, come around, add a shade in the middle, like right here. Okay. And then we went up to our right curve right here, stop right there. So right curve up, then our left curve down here to our baseline right at that point. So left curve down. Then we're going to do a straight line up to the waistline, like just straight up like this. And then another left curve up to this point right here. So transition and do a left curve up. Okay, so let's do that together. So give me a name that starts with the letter W. And then let me write that for you guys. Yeah, for me, it really helps to see the script in all of the basic forms, the basic principle of stroke. So I do like to kind of say it out loud, like left curve, right curve, reverse oval, semi-angular oval. I feel like it kind of reinforces the, principles in my mind. Okay, Walter, Wendy. Oh, I wish I could write all of them for you guys, but I'm just writing the first one that I see here. Okay, so I'm going to do with my pointed nib. So we're going to use this oval here. So how you're going to use this is for the first part, that's where it really helps. So going from your baseline, coming up. Adding a shade release. Okay, then W. This stroke right here was a little wonky. I think I would have wanted a little lower here, curving it up. Okay, Walter. So then the A. L. P. Oops. I did not connect that well. And then R. Okay, Walter. Here is, I guess, yeah, it's good to show you guys my mistakes as I am human too. So you see this connection point right here? Okay, this triangle space, it connected right here, which is not what I wanted to do. You actually want to connect the T like this. Let me do it down here. You want to connect the T like with your right curve, lift up your pen, thick to thin, straight down, and then exit. Okay, so this is your letter T, but don't drag it like I just did right there. You want to lift up your pen, so go 1, 2, like that. So the connection point should be right there. Okay, but anyways, let's go back to the example. And then usually for something like this, you can either cross it through if you want to do a little bit of a flourish. cross it through your letter like that. Okay, I think that is what I wanted to share with you guys in terms of, ooh, okay. I forgot. We do have one more. I'm sorry. One more last. We have one last uppercase principal stroke, which is this one, and then we'll close with this. It's 5:15. Okay, so here is our capital stem. This one is going to be, we're going to go into our slant line and then veer out of our slant line, going from hairline, add a pressure towards the bottom. Again, it's very bottom heavy for this particular stroke. Okay, so again, we just practice it, warming up our hands, add a pressure, release. Come into our sand, stay on your sand, add a pressure towards the bottom and release. Okay, so use these guides and well as your traceables to really practice this basic strokes. And you really want to gain control. Having control over your pressure and release takes time. You know, I remember in the beginning, I was really shaky and I was uncertain and all my letters look very like not like smooth. They looked very wobbly and shaky. But that will improve over time. Okay, so let's go down here now. I just want to show you guys if I am doing this particular stroke. Okay, I'm going to show you where this comes up in our Spencerian. Is you're going to go into our capital stem, add a pressure. You're going to do that reverse oval. Come around. Stop a little bit above your waistline, come through, and then add a dot right there. So there is your Spencerian letter P. Okay, let's do that again. So go into your capital stem, add a pressure, come around, through, and then add a dot. Okay. So this embedded oval shape right here is like 2 unit space wide. Okay. And then you want to add the shade here towards the bottom of this capital stem. And then you want to make sure to leave a little gap here between your waistline and then where you end your letter P. So going back to this particular guide sheet here, it's really helpful to use this guide sheet to practice the letters that have that embedded oval. So give me a name for letter P. So I'm going to show you right here. So I would probably use it like this, where you go into your letter, come around, add your top of your P, and then finish with your dot. Okay, this embedded oval shape has really helped me to get that shape right when I'm coming around like this in a counterclockwise way, right? And so definitely use these guide sheets to practice your letters and work on those, building up those muscle for your hands. Okay. Praise. Okay, I'll do praise. So let's go down here, right here. How do you guys feel? Like, do you feel like this is helpful for you guys to see how I use these guide sheets? Okay, go into your capital stem, add a pressure towards the bottom, come around, and a dot. And then we're going to do R. S. E. Put a little flick mark right there. Okay, see, I don't know if you guys caught this, but oh, this one, I feel like my ink was getting ink flow here. If you look at some of my, the way that I'm connecting my uppercase to a lowercase, even with this A and even with this R here, I do like to kind of begin, if my uppercase letter does not end at the baseline, I actually like to extend out my entrance stroke for my next lowercase letter because I feel like it just really closes up the gap here in terms of the white space and it makes it look more cohesive. So that's why, that's the reason, in case you guys are wondering, that's why I added this extended entrance stroke. That's something that I typically do when I'm writing out whether it be copperplate or Spencerian. That's just something like a little tip, I guess, in terms of kind of how to make your uppercase letter look seamless with your lowercase letter by putting in some strokes to close up the gaps. So because this uppercase letter for W ends above your waistline. And so if I didn't have this entrance stroke, there would be a lot of gap here. Or even if I started it down here, it's okay. But for some reason, I just think it looks a lot nicer if you started below the baseline here. And so that's why I do it for most of my words when I'm doing it where the uppercase letter goes kind of ends be above the baseline. Okay, so I guess that's all the time I have for you guys today. Hopefully, yeah, you guys can see just the benefits of using guide sheets and also traceable letters because I think when you guys are learning a new script, um, there can be a lot of confusion or questions regarding where to start or where to finish your letters, or even the ratio, like how high or how wide the letters should be. And so that's why for me, it takes me a lot of time to actually build my guide sheets from scratch because I had to like test it multiple times to make sure that it's going to work for the Spencerian letter forms. And so hopefully this session was helpful for you. I'm sorry for going overtime, but I will send out a follow-up email for those of you who are joining a little later. I'll send you guys some more information. If you guys want to join my course, we're going to start all together next Tuesday. So I believe let me check my calendar. So I only open this course twice a year. And I'm going to close registration May 12th on Monday, and then we're going to start all together on Tuesday. So it's a 9-week class, and I usually kind of guide my students through like each of the modules. So there's about like it's basically a course that incorporates about 4 in-person workshops because even my in-person workshops are 5 hours long, but there's just no way to cover all this information even in that one workshop. And so that's why I created these online courses because they're like all inclusive, just like everything that you need to know to learn Spencerian with all the tools and the guide sheets to help you execute them. Oh, hi, Yara. I'm like noticing all my students from my classes. But thank you so much for joining me today. I don't want to hold you guys too long, but I will follow up with you guys soon. And hopefully I can do more of these live sessions to give you guys some tips as well as further help if you guys are interested in learning with me. I love to have you in class. Okay, thank you guys so much. I'll talk